Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Josh Balk. I'm a watershed and source water protection coordinator here with the Iowa Department of Natural Resources. And for the last 8 years or so, I've had the pleasure of working on the Dry Run Creek Watershed Improvement Project. And with that, I've had a large focus on urban conservation. And it's actually a subject I'm really passionate about. I enjoy talking about it. So I really appreciate the opportunity to come be here with you today and appreciate Trees Forever for involving me in this. So because we're meeting here virtually today, I can't take you out and show you all the wonderfulness that is Dry Run Creek. So instead, we'll just give a little bit of background information about the Watershed Project and why we're talking about it. So Dry Run Creek is located here in Black Hawk County. It's about a 15,000 acre watershed and has a dendrous network of drainage channels. And with that, it starts in the rural agricultural lands and then winds its way through the city of Cedar Falls. So along the way, it touches agricultural land that includes regular field crops as well as some livestock areas. And then in our urban areas, it touches industrial, commercial, residential, as well as some natural areas, all before it outlets to the Cedar River. So we do have a diverse land use mix here in the watershed. And one thing we've noticed over the years of monitoring is an increase in the urbanization. So not only is there urban sprawl where our agricultural lands are being converted and developed, but our highest intense areas of urbanization are becoming even more urbanized. So more hard surfaces, more buildings, and that kind of stuff. And so why I'm even talking about this, or why we're even talking about Dry Run Creek in general, is because Dry Run Creek faces two state designated water quality impairments. We have high levels of bacteria, and we also have a biological impairment, which means we have a low diversity and quantity of aquatic creatures, including both fish and benthic macroinvertebrates, which are creatures that live in and around the streams for some part of their life cycle. And what we found through monitoring is stormwater runoff is a contributing cause and the major contributing cause to our water quality impairments. So you might ask yourself, why focus on stormwater? Well, that leads us to a rich history that we get to dive into here. So we're going to jump in a magical time machine of imagination and go back a few hundred years in Iowa. And what we predominantly see as the landform regions throughout our state, number one was prairie, or more notably the tallgrass prairie, and that stretched from river to river. And then we also had many wetland features throughout the land as well. And if you look at these are vegetated areas. We had plants growing year after year, growing, decaying, dying, and breaking down, and then contributing their organic matter. And that built up over the years since our last glaciation here thousands of years ago. And so with that, we had very high organic rich soils that built up over the years. And it's estimated that Iowa had about 70% of our state covered with this native prairie system. And you can see the blue squiggly lines are our river systems and pockets of wetlands. You see some woodland forested areas as well. But I would say that's generally what our state consisted of. So when settlers came to our state, they saw this rich organic matter soils, some of the best in the world, and identified how great of an opportunity it would be. And so a lot of the prairie lands were tilled up and converted to crop production, livestock use, And we also found that a lot of our wetland areas were drained to make use of this land as well. So just within the last few hundred years, we lost a significant amount of our native prairie heritage. Right now we have less than 0.1% of that tallgrass native prairie remaining. And so if you look at those blue squiggly lines, going from crops that were grown year-round, growing and decaying, dying over thousands of years, and then we switch to agricultural row crop usage, where it only has plants growing on there certain times of the year, that's a very big change, especially from a hydrologic perspective on how these rivers and systems function. But now we're seeing even further change here. And I guess to best exemplify this is some aerial photography from the 1930s. And this is situated on the southern portion of the city of Cedar Falls at that time. I'll say with the major roads there are University Avenue and Hudson Road for folks that are familiar. And you notice this blue squiggly line cutting across the landscape there. And then you jump 90 years to close to present time, and we can see a pretty stark comparison in the landform use there. What was originally primarily prairie, maybe some wetland areas, then converted to row crop production, land use, and then now we have heavily urbanized environments with roads, with buildings, and lots of people living in and around utilizing this land. And you still see that blue squiggly line cutting through there, but it has seen some significant changes just in the last few hundred years. And that little river or stream is still trying to do what it can. And for those who don't know, that's good old Dry Run Creek there. And this isn't just an isolated experience here in Dry Run Creek. We've noticed throughout our state that we do have a growing population, that our urban areas are becoming more urbanized, that there is agricultural lands that is now being developed and converted to housing, to human use. And so that's further changing these blue squiggly lines that scatter our landscape here and the way they function in the hydrologic model. All right, so to put some numbers to this stormwater runoff, if we're out in a natural area, well, and we have a rainstorm come in, because we have plants, because we have vegetation, we have root structures and systems growing, when that rain falls, about half of it goes into the ground. It's absorbed, utilized by these plants, can go into the groundwater system, things like that. Plants are utilizing it through the evapotranspiration process, and it's going back up into the air. And then we see a little bit of stormwater runoff from that. But then when we get in our urbanized environments, we see that infiltration decrease because there's less green areas for water to go. It's kind of hard for water to be absorbed in concrete unless there's cracks in it. So we see that runoff increase and that evapotranspiration decrease. But then when we get in heavily urbanized environments, we see very little water infiltration and a significant amount of runoff. So a lot of times folks think, wow, I just live here in my happy little home. What role do I have in stormwater? Why is this an issue? So we're going to continue using our magical minds of imagination. We're going to go with the average size home here and have exactly a 1-inch rainstorm event fall on this average size home, on this average size lot. So just from the roof and patio area, you can estimate about 900 gallons of stormwater runoff is coming off the building alone. Add in an average size driveway, that's an additional 500 gallons coming off from that. And then when you include the yards, which a lot of time can be composed of compacted soils, maybe some very clay soils that don't let water infiltrate easily. So just in this 1-inch rainstorm event, on this average lot, you can see about 4,000 gallons of water running off the land, going into the street, a lot of times being utilized by the stormwater systems and being piped away. So that's just one home. And then you add during one rain event. And then you add in that, we see anywhere between 30 to 40 inches of rain here in our state on average each year. So I'll say that can be about 128,000 gallons of rain each year from one home. So then you scale that up to all the homes that are in a community. And then you add in the roadways and the buildings. And you can see why it really adds up quickly the amount of water we're talking about here. And the water, a lot of time it utilizes our storm drain system and is piped away. So that way, yep, I would say we're protecting our infrastructure. We want to protect our homes and our investments there. No one wants to get flooded or anything like that. But the downside to getting this water away in a very efficient manner possible is that this water then outlets to our local river, streams, and ponds areas. And it's not treated, so any pollution it picks up along the way, whether that's litter, whether that's chemicals, anything like that, that gets carried in the stream or in the storm drain channel to our water bodies. And that's where it can lead to problems. And so we're talking both water quantity as well as water quality issues. So you can easily think about some of the chemicals that might be caught in there, oil runoff, hydrocarbons, nutrients, fertilizer from lawns, chemicals, things like that. And that's what can impact the aquatic creatures that live in and around our streams. And then when you think about water quantity, we can have localized flooding or large-scale flooding when we have these high-intensity rainfall events and heavily impervious surfaces. There's nowhere for that water to go, so it builds up, and that's where we can have issues. And that's where we can see stormwater damage. We can see sloughage and erosion along our stream areas as well, and sedimentation. So yeah, so it can just kind of build upon itself and cause complications. But it's not all doom and gloom. There are lots of wonderful things out there. So we have opportunities through these issues that arise. And so this kind of demonstrates the traditional stormwater infrastructure model where we have hard surface, it goes through a pipe system and then is outletted somewhere far away, protecting that wonderful family's home there. But what we're trying to utilize or trying to mimic here is Iowa's native prairie hydrology, where the majority of the stormwater is absorbed into the ground and gets a chance to infiltrate, where it can remove a lot of the pollutants, I'll say it can recharge our groundwater and just help out, help reduce both the water quality and water quantity issues. So that's the goal with our infiltration-based practices that comprise a lot of urban conservation here in our state. So now we'll do a quick dive into what some of these urban conservation practices look like. So rainwater harvesting, rain barrels, detention systems. I would say these are like the gateway drugs to urban conservation. These are something small, simple. You can set it up yourself, go to the store, buy one for, $30 to $100, set it up, and this will give folks a great appreciation for how much water is coming off their home each year. These, a lot of times, 55-ish gallon drums fill up very quickly from even small rain events. But the important things with rainwater harvesting is if you don't use it, you lose it. If you don't utilize the water you're collecting in these barrels, utilizing it for your garden, for your plants, your flower beds, things like that, and it's just sitting there, then it's not really having the water conservation benefit we're going for. So keeping in mind that and incorporating these rain barrels into an area that's going to be most beneficial for you, so close to your garden or flower bed where you'll be utilizing it. Otherwise, yep, you can use, the hoses or little rain buckets, water buckets to convert the water around to where you're needed. And I would say the important thing with rainwater harvesting is this is not for human consumption at all. This is strictly for use on plants, and there are recommendations out there, not necessarily put it on the fruit of the plant, put it at the base, things like that. But like I said, this is very simple and easy way to get involved with urban conservation right off the bat. So another great opportunity to incorporate urban conservation is by utilizing native prairie landscaping. So especially when we think about us only having less than 1/10 of a remnant tallgrass prairie here in our state, anywhere where we can incorporate these prairie plants is going to be beneficial. And probably one of the best examples of that is by providing habitat for our pollinators. We know the plight that our monarchs and bees are facing, and so pollinators really benefit from this from native prairie landscaping. And so this is bees and butterflies and birds as well, and the creatures that live in and around them. And by providing food and habitat for them, obviously we're helping them out significantly. And these can be done in very attractive manners that also help out, raise positive attitudes towards prairie as well. And also highlight that when we think about our traditional lawns, I always tell folks, however short you mow your grass is how deep your root structure is. So if you're mowing to 2 inches, you have 2 inches of roots beneath the ground. And when you compare that to our native prairie plants, they can have several feet of root structures, and they can do a fantastic job of breaking up clayey soils. They can break up compaction. They can great channels for water to infiltrate much better through their root systems. And then they're adding, great opportunities for our soil microbes, providing them with some food and some sustenance. So this is, like I said, this is returning Iowa to what it was pre-settlement, and a great benefit. And these can be small landscape features, and even just including, a few milkweed plants. You're helping out our monarchs. But you can do larger areas as well. And so this not only includes the flowering forbs, we also have our native prairie grasses, and there's even native prairie turf out there as well. And so ways to incorporate that. And like I said, there's lots of wonderful folks here that are in this video series. So I'm not a native prairie professional by trade, and so I'll maybe leave some of this for them to highlight. But I would say native prairie landscaping is a fantastic opportunity to get involved with conservation. So we are so benefited here about the opportunities native prairie landscaping provides. And there's just such a wide variety of species that work well in a wide variety of conditions, whether you have compacted clay soils or very fast draining soils, whether you have very high full sun conditions or you have a shaded area of your yard you'd like to incorporate native prairie. If you have, you want to attract specific insects or pollinators. I would say there is such a wide variety of prairie species out there that do well in our local landscapes that I would say you can really get anything you want. But one thing I always try and caution folks is to be aware of your local municipality, if they have specific rules, regulations on what you can plant, where you can plant it. Because a lot of times, there can be height restrictions on plants. So I would say you don't want to create a nuisance or a safety issue. So being smart about where native prairie plantings are getting put. You don't want to do it right next to a sidewalk where a plant's going to get 10 feet tall and droop over. You won't want to necessarily do it at the end of your driveway, so that way you can't see where you're backing out. So there's just some common solutions for that stuff. But like I said, ensuring that you're going to be in line and not create ruffle feathers of your friends, your neighbors, or your local municipality. Very key stuff, but lots of great resources, lots of great opportunities out there for native prairie landscaping. So another really beneficial urban conservation practice is called soil quality restoration. And the goal with SQR is to try and utilize our existing landscape or existing lawns and make them function better. So this is a step process that starts off by aerating the soil, and ideally if we can use deep tine aerators where we're going down 6 to 8 inches or so, that does a great job of breaking up soil compaction, opening pore spaces for the soil here. And then there's an application of high quality compost. And this is usually about 1/4 to 1/2 an inch in thickness, just enough to try and add some of that to the soil. And I would say over a few days to a week or so, this compost breaks down, fills in these pore spaces, and then is utilized by the soil microbes there. And it is a huge boost for their activity there, and really just helps the soil function more like a sponge rather than a hard surface as some of our compacted clay soils can cause. And so, so I'll say returning our soils to a more functioning model. And I would say, that's great. But I would say for lawn care enthusiasts out there, there's an additional benefit. By adding this high quality compost there, you are adding a huge organic boost to that soil. And that really helps the soil function better. So what you'll commonly see is the grass is greener earlier in the year. It can handle the drier summer conditions and may even stay greener late in the year. So you kind of see that bottom right-hand corner demonstrates that, and some of the, like I said, that keeping up with the Joneses benefits type work. So now we're going to dive into my favorite urban conservation practice of all, rain gardens. So rain gardens are landscape depressions in the ground, and their goal is to temporarily pond and store water runoff, usually from a downspout, maybe a driveway or some specific hard surface. It's directed towards the rain garden where, it will slowly infiltrate into the ground over a few hours, no more than 24 hours. We want water sitting there. And sometimes if we have less than ideal conditions, you might have to do what's called an enhanced rain garden, which just involves maybe excavating a little bit deeper, maybe involving some more stormwater infrastructure into that as well. But the intent for these is to be beautiful landscape features that benefit our land. And so the great thing about rain gardens is each one of these is customized for the homeowner themselves. This is based on their landscape, their drainage patterns, where their roofs and buildings are, where the water's going. It's also factored by their budget. Some of these were done by professional landscaping companies. Some of these were done by volunteers and the homeowners themselves. So some of these are more expensive than others. And some of these, I'll say a wide variety of plants that can be utilized in these rain gardens. And so a lot of times that's a factor in deciding what plants get put in there, and that's where the homeowners get involved with what they want to see. And I would say the shapes, I would say pretty much can be modified any which way, some of the aesthetic features as well. Main requirements are just properly sizing the rain garden, and that helps ensure its function and longevity. But as you can see in these photos, there's just such a wide variety. And these are just, the few dozen that we've done here in Dry Run Creek over the last few years. And like I said, this is a great opportunity for homeowners to have a role in conservation. Everyone has downspouts, so this is just a great opportunity there. So if folks are curious about rain gardens, well, I would say probably the one-stop shop to find out all about rain gardens is the Iowa Rain Garden Guide. And so this was just updated just a few years ago, and this includes everything in there: the step-by-step process for installing a rain garden, the siting conditions, recommendations, calculations for how much materials you're going to need. I mean, it really is everything. The intent is for this that any homeowner could pick this up, read it, and feel a little bit more confident with a rain garden, have a full understanding of it. But this is the same thing that professional conservationists and landscapers utilize as well. So you can go ahead, hop online, give that a download, and dive in. Like I said, it's a really great feature there that's very beneficial indeed. And I would be amiss to not include some of the photos of the wonderful volunteers we've had the pleasure of working with over the years on helping implement rain gardens. So we've partnered with conservation groups, with homeowners, with students from first grade all the way through college and everyone in between. So like I said, this isn't something big and scary. This is something that folks can get involved with. You know, a lot of times you can get these knocked out in a weekend. So yep, if you're looking for a perfect summer way to spend a summer weekend, I would say rain garden into your landscape might be a great opportunity for you. So another conservation opportunity is permeable pavement. And so a couple different forms utilized here in our state, permeable pavers and porous asphalt. And so I'll say we understand that, yep, I'll say we need our road systems, we need our streets, parking lots, and our driveways. You know, those aren't going anywhere, but there's a way to make them a little bit greener to reduce their impact and utilize them as green infrastructure. I mean, that's a huge win there. So the intent of permeable pavement is to still keep the pavement in place. I would say you can drive on it, you can do all the normal uses you would, but then it utilizes a large rock chamber underneath. And so there's usually several layers of rock, of different size rock aggregates to create storage areas for that stormwater runoff. The pavers are set off a little bit each, and so you can kind of see in that lower left-hand corner that there's a little bit of space between each of the pavers, and that's filled with small rock chip. So that's where water can work its way through the pavers down into that rock chamber system. For porous asphalt, it kind of has air pockets and channels with it. So on the top, it might look like similar to traditional asphalt, but it almost has a Rice Krispie-like texture. So water works its way through the top layer of the pavement into the rock chamber system, and that's where it can slowly work its way into the surrounding existing soils. And these do a lot of times include stormwater infrastructure, so some pipings, just to handle large rain events, ensure that there isn't water sitting in there for extended periods of time. We don't want an underground pool or anything like that in these rock chambers. But wide variety of use. You can see alleyways, parking lots, driveways. So great opportunities for homeowners to get involved, and like I say, also reduce their stormwater impact as well. So a lot of this work, you might be thinking, well, how can I even do some of this stuff? Well, I'll say, if it takes a team, we're all partners in this together, so no one's alone in the realm of conservation here. So my role as a watershed coordinator is to work with landowners to try and help identify what conservation might be a good fit for their home, try and help them with the process. Sometimes we can utilize financial incentives. Sometimes they're just looking for the technical resources. So there's folks like myself, and I'll say there's watershed coordinators throughout the entire state, but then there's lots of other conservation professionals that can provide the same services as well. So some days out there hugging trees, playing in the dirt, swimming in the water, but a lot of times that's behind the scenes work, doing the paperwork that's involved to make this happen. And a lot of times what that starts off with is getting a plan in place. So this is going out, meeting someone out in the field, trying to identify what their concerns are, what conservation solutions there are, and get a feel for where the happy medium is between the two. I have to say, I think the Natural Resource Conservation Service has one of the best mottos in the area, helping people help the land. And I think that's really the mentality urban conservationists take. We're not anti-development. We don't want to tear down homes and break up roadways. We're trying to find that happy medium of sustainable green solutions where we can all be happy in our homes, we can all drive our cars down the road, but we can do it in a way that doesn't have a detrimental impact on our environment. And if anything, we can help improve our environment with this use of urban conservation work. And so, yep, so I'll say sometimes that involves surveying, siting, designing, hopping on the computer to come up with a wonderful plan so that way a homeowner can do that. So There's contractors, there's conservation professionals, there's lots of folks out there that can be resources for homeowners such as yourself. All right, so speaking of potential resources, like I said, it's not just the conservationists out there. There's work that even you can do from the comfort of your own home to look into urban conservation here. So probably one of the best one-stop shops for urban conservation in our state is the Iowa Stormwater Education Partnership, or also known as ISWEP. You can hop on their website there. They have a plethora of resources and information for you there, pretty much covering every topic of urban conservation. So, we hit a lot of the smaller residential ones, but there's even more urban conservation practices out there that are maybe for more large scale, whether that's large businesses or even regional neighborhoods, things like that. So, like I said, lots of conservation opportunities out there, and ISWEP is a great resource. You can hop over to their website and kind of download any of these brochures, get connected with further resources and information. So definitely check them out. Another one, if you're kind of curious what might be a good fit for your home, you can hop on to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency Stormwater Calculator. So this is wonderful. Just go to that website down there, and I'll say you can type in your address, and this will, ping your home there, and it will tell you about your soils. It'll tell you about your hydrology, your precipitation, a lot of those features like that. But then the really cool feature that can come up is you can try and prioritize maybe your levels and interest in how you might want to control your stormwater runoff from your home. So if you're really excited about rain gardens, you could bump that up. If you decide, no, permeable pavement is for you, take that all the way down. But you can run any number of scenarios with this and play around. And what it's going to do is it's going to print up a report for you and kind of show the different scenarios you can look at. So this is a really great resource. Like I said, you can do it from the comfort of your home, do a quick dive, and maybe get a little bit of basic information and help identify what you might be interested in. All right, so another big question lots of folks have is, okay, yep, I want to do this conservation. How can I afford this? And so that's where there are financial incentives throughout the state that homeowners and businesses and institutions, everything in between, can qualify. So here in Dry Run Creek, we've utilized a variety of grant funds to keep our watershed improvement project going for 18 years now. And so we've been, say this involves writing grants, this involves pulling partners together. And so I'll say we've been able to do that, but not everyone lives in Dry Run Creek. I know you'd all love to, but yep, not everyone can. But there are other active watershed improvement projects throughout the state. And I'll say there's other resources as well, especially if you live in a municipal area, if you live in a city, there is a chance that your municipality might utilize some of the stormwater fee that you pay on your monthly water bill, and they redirect that as cost share for homeowners. So that would be a great place to start. If you do live within a city, contacting your local stormwater specialist or your engineering department, sometimes they might be located within that, and just inquiring if there is a local cost share program for urban conservation work. Another great resource for folks, your local soil and water conservation district. So each county in our state has a soil and water conservation district made up of elected officials, the soil and water conservation district commissioners that volunteer their time to help protect our land, and they work with a variety of partners to try and help do that, and so they can be great resources. I'll say the commissioners might not necessarily come out and inspect your home to see if a rain garden is a good fit, but they can work with their other partners through the office and try and help identify maybe a potential resource for you there. So if you're unsure where your local soil and water conservation district is, you don't know where the office is or who to contact, you can go ahead and hop on that IDALS website there and get further information. I kind of mentioned earlier, there are lots of active watershed improvement project efforts here in our state. There's agencies and groups that are pulling together resources to try and help improve water quality, and on both the smaller scale and the larger scale. And so this involves working with landowners to get conservation on the ground. Some of these do include some urban conservation use as well. So I would say, yep, your soil and water conservation district would know, yep, if you do happen to be within a specific watershed, targeted water body where there are funds available. So that's where your SWCD can try and help get you connected as well. Just because we're talking about watersheds, I'd be amiss if I didn't highlight our watershed management authorities. And I would say we can see how much of our state is getting covered with these WMAs. So these are partners, groups coming around the table from counties, cities, SWCDs, and organizations, everyone in between that try and looking at improving water quality throughout our state. So it really is a targeted team effort to try and help improve water quality. So there are lots of resources that homeowners like yourself can get involved with to try and help as well. All right, so I've done lots of talking so far, so I suppose it's time to try and get this all pulled together here for you folks. So a lot of times, folks reach out to me when there's an issue, when they have waterfront property that they did not intentionally buy when they signed on to this home. And, you know, that is common. We are seeing localized water issues, especially with higher intensity rainfall events. So these do become more and more problematic for folks as our urban areas get more developed, as we get higher rainfall events, more intense rainfall events. That's where these issues can be created. But like I said, these issues are opportunities for solutions. And so that's where we try and utilize this urban conservation. So we can help improve water quality here. I would say we can reduce the pollution and chemicals that are getting into our water bodies, impacting the aquatic creatures there. A lot of times this urban conservation is intended to be attractive landscape features. So you are adding features to your land that I would say is not only attractive to us people, but I would say we're helping out our pollinators as well. You know, our monarchs, they're definitely needed that. So when we can add flowering plants that they've been adapted to over thousands of years that they benefit from, I would say that's a win for lots of folks here. And really, when you think about it, urban conservation is you being a good neighbor. Water flows downhill, and so unless you're at the bottom of the hill, you have a potential to impact someone by your choices. I always highlight, we all live in a watershed, we all have a role to play. So if you can reduce your stormwater footprint on your own home, even by a small amount, I'll say it's having a growing effect by your neighbor, by someone who lives further, you know, the city that lives downstream from you. So I'll say it's not just your neighborhood, I'll say it's our regional neighbor and just our metaphorical neighbor, because we all live in a watershed. Value stands to best benefit from urban conservation is our future generations. I mean, they're going to be the folks that inherit our land. You know, they're our future homeowners, they're our future mayors, our future representatives or educators and stuff. So I would say anything we can do to try and help improve our land, I would say we leave a lasting legacy. So, you know, even if it's just your small 1,000 square foot home, you are leaving a legacy for the future. And I may just take a brief step down from the soapbox there. You don't have to install an urban conservation practice to feel good about yourself or to sleep at night. I'm not intending to try and keep anyone awake or say you have to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars to renovate your home just to be a good person. There are very simple, easy steps that anyone can do to try and help reduce their stormwater footprint. And I'll say some of the best things you can do for water quality. I'll say how could I not highlight that trees are wonderful and beneficial for stormwater, being on a Trees Forever webinar here. But I would say raising awareness for water quality and conservation. I would say whether that's your friends, whether that's your family, whether that's your elected representatives, whether that's your colleagues, anyone that I would say if you're passionate about urban conservation or you love rain gardens, I would say why not talk to someone about it? Strike up a conversation. You never know where that's going to lead, and I would say it can all have that growing impact where we all get to benefit from. And then I'll say, I always try and highlight, in your own backyard, in your front yard, I would say you have, it's your own little farmland, pretty much. I like to highlight. So, if you're putting pesticides on there, if you're putting herbicides, if you're putting fertilizer on there, that's all having an impact. It might be small scale, but especially in our urban environments, that builds up significantly. And so doing the same thing we work with our farmers on, using the right rate at the right time and the right place and right source. So the 4 R's, that is essential work. So I'll say it's not just for our farmers and producers, that's for homeowners as well. So making sure that, yep, I'll say your fertilizer, you're not doing it right before a rainstorm is going to happen. You're not using de-icer and throwing road salt on there all over your sidewalk and driveway, and then letting it, in huge unnecessary quantities there. So, say being smart about, about that use is really important as well. And then just, I'll say general good housekeeping. If you mow your yard just a little bit higher, you're increasing the root structure just a little bit more. So I'll say if you can stomach it and your neighbors don't get too mad at you, yeah, let grow, raise your deck a ½ inch and just kind of see how that goes. And yep, and I'll say making sure that your leaves and grass clippings don't end up in the storm drain system. I'll say so raking them or piling them in an area where they're not just gonna get washed away is really key. Cleaning up your pet waste, I'll say that's important. Reduce E. coli in our streams. Don't litter. Like I said, lots of simple activities that folks can do to get involved with conservation as well. And then one of the best ways you can get involved and show your support of conservation is by getting involved, donating your time, volunteering. There's lots of conservation efforts throughout our state, both in our urban areas and our rural areas. And so there's advisory groups, there's watershed projects, there's WMAs, there's boards. I would say getting involved with any of those organizations and voicing your support, lending your time and your talents, I would say that's supremely beneficial. And so, yeah, there's lots of opportunities. You can get certified as a water monitor. You can get involved with a stream cleanup. You can do a stream cleanup yourself. And I'll say it doesn't even have to be a big cleanup. I'll say if you pick up a pop bottle, anytime you walk out in a hiking area, even just one has a growing impact. So these can be super small steps that are beneficial. And what I'd say, staying connected, whether that is with groups, going to meetings, or just getting on social media and following these groups, finding out what's going on. That's probably the best way to stay informed and keep up to date on what's going on there. So, like I said, a little bit of time, but that's a big benefit as well. So I know you're always supposed to end presentations to highlight why you got involved with conservation. And that guy sitting on that beach over there, that's my nephew. And I would say that's kind of going back to the future. I would say they're the reason why I got involved with conservation. I want to leave the world a little bit better than what it was when I found it. And I would say my nephews and nieces are a motivating force for that. And yep, I would say getting out, enjoying our natural resources is one of the best way, appreciating what we have and trying to protect them. So, okay, end of spiel there. I'll say I know we're going to take some questions here, but I'll say I'm leaving my contact information up here. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. I can't always give you an answer, but I can hopefully at least get you connected to someone who can on any wide variety of topics. But I'll say urban conservation, that's by far my favorite thing. Always happy to talk with folks about that. So thank you for paying attention, and I'll say looking forward to our questions and conversation here.